And of course.
Short. Trying to get out the game, James.
Oh, yeah? You got a date?
That's what I'm not feeling like.
You got a date?
I'm feeling like get out the game all today, right now.
No, I'm...
I'm serious, dude.
Our mic on?
Feeling you. These days are coming more rapid. Like,
I got you.
My poor stuff.
I think the anchor's got it, but I'll still put it on.
I had a thing over at PCGL, and I had to go to Nats Park for some concert. Then
it's that big stroller.
I just flagged it. I didn't stand for it.
I mean,
Hoping to be out of here. I know, and I'm trying to get
which way does it?
Yeah. You know, I'm just like, which one do you want me by?
I don't want to bring
I don't care.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Okay.
Do it the other way.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
She was 23.
You should just go with that. Mark that somehow. It's a better sound.
Go with it. Thank you.
That's a lot, my friend.
And
When did you have that conversation? I didn't know that. Let it populate.
You know, so it's like, it occurred, so it's 20 degrees warmer than it was Tuesday. And it's still below freezing. And it feels like balmy.
Oh, sorry.
You sent it to Jackie.
I have a question. Are you like talking to it, or they're going to take it? Okay, so you're going 5 o'clock straight.
That was my news director calling.
Okay, so you're not going to do anything and go to her?
I think then I'll come back and do it at 6.
You'll come back, okay.
That's what the news director said.
I know, right? It might take a second or two. Yeah.
Okay, all those things. Yeah, it was a beautiful, brutal funeral.
Fresh, maybe? Yeah. Khyree. Who did the job?
Khyree and Isaiah.
Pork meat.
Where? Back to Chicago? That's where you came from, isn't it?
I go to Mexico.
It depends where you are. But I want you to talk about. I mean, like, Juarez gets cold.
Does
I think that they're both. Juarez gets as cold as El Paso. But I also think they get snow every now and then. And then if you're up on a mountain somewhere, it gets real cold.
they have to change batteries too.
I'm not worried about that. Don't worry about it.
Judy.
Oh, man. You might say 100%. You stick it on the camera and I'm like 13 volts. I'm like, why is this? It should show like 60. But I like it.
I have to open it as a...
Sorry, bro. I'm still like, it's like a reminder of me.
What's
2-minute warning.
Okay. 2-minute warning.
Hey,
Oh,
Brad,
yeah, they see.
you want to stay over?
They get that a lot, too.
You want to go?
They earn it.
Hey, Darcy. Hey.
Are you in the control room? Yeah. Really? When do we hit? We're ready whenever you are.
Hey, Darcy. You're okay. Hi.
We're,
See you again?
you're a go.
Here it goes. So you
Yep,
want to
go ahead.
now?
Go. Okay, bye. Bye, Ash.
Is everyone ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
On July 6th of 2024, our community lost 3 amazing young men. All were scholars, all were athletes. One was headed to the NFL, had just been drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. Each of their lives was special, important, and a tragic loss for their families and our community. I want to read their names because each of them deserve our consideration and our prayers. Khyree Jackson, Anthony Lytton Jr., and Isaiah Hazel. They were friends. They were classmates. They were teammates at Wise High School. These were 3 young men who had gotten it right in life, who had amazing, bright futures ahead of them. But on July 6th, they were taken away from all of us. They lost their lives in a horrific car crash that occurred on Route 4, Pennsylvania Avenue. And today, the facts of that case were presented to a grand jury. And a Prince George's County grand jury returned a 13-count indictment against Khyree Klingman for her role in this horrific, tragic collision. Her counts include grossly negligent and criminally negligent vehicular manslaughter, as well as counts of vehicular manslaughter related to driving under the influence and being impaired by alcohol for each of the victims. This was a horrific tragedy that should not have occurred. Ms. Klingman was arrested today by the Office of the Sheriff without incident. She is being held at this time. She will have a bond hearing or bond review in the future. But this just starts really our fight to get justice for these 3 young men, their families, Wise High School, the NFL, and this entire community. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. There's not a lot I can say at this time because this is an ongoing investigation as well as we are preparing to prosecute this case.
What can you say about the series of events that led up to this and the crash itself?
Well, what I can say is that vehicles, at least one or more, were traveling at a very high rate of speed, and that really was a huge factor in what happened that night.
There was a narrative at the time, and I think the state police even put it out, that Ms. Klingman's car, the Infiniti, ran the other car off the road. Can you get into that at all?
We believe that there was contact made between Ms. Klingman's vehicle and the victim's vehicle.
Can you say, you mentioned DUI, can you say what the breathalyzer was that night? How drunk was she, or was she legally drunk?
What we can say is that we have charged her with DUI as well as being impaired and causing the death of these 3 individuals. That's what we can say at this time.
So she would have to have at least a .08, if not higher.
That is correct. In order for us to meet the elements of that charge, yes.
Were there any other blood toxicology tests that showed anything besides alcohol, any other intoxicating substances?
At this time, we don't have any information that there was any other intoxicants.
And just being respectful to the family, obviously, but as far as the victims in this case, any indication, that they were going fast as well, or anything like that, or they just going along minding their own business, and this person came out of nowhere at a high rate of speed?
At this time, I can't really share information on that, but just know that we believe that the charges against Ms. Klingman were fair and appropriate.
You mentioned the fight for justice. Can you talk a little bit about the 6 months between now, or from the crash to now, that led, in this investigation?
Absolutely. Well, the Maryland State Police did a very thorough investigation. I wanted to say thank you to the men and women of the Maryland State Police. They did a very comprehensive investigation, and oftentimes it requires a lot of work, and so it takes time because they have to get it right. And so it took some time. When they got their report to us, we were able to turn it around in just a couple of weeks and present it to a grand jury.
Can you say how much time she's facing? What is, because Maryland has a lot of different laws as far as manslaughter and things like that. What's the most serious charge, and what kind of time?
Up to 30 years in prison. Maryland's motor vehicle manslaughter laws are some of the most lenient in the country in terms of the time that prosecutors can request and maximum penalty. So 10 years for each of the individuals is the maximum penalty that the law allows. And so there have been efforts in Annapolis to increase that time, but those efforts have not passed. I did testify last year on a bill to increase the maximum penalty for grossly negligent manslaughter, but the legislature has to make that decision, and unfortunately our job is to enforce the law.
Is that up again this year? Or?
I believe there is a bill again this year.
You mentioned that there was an arrest earlier today. Do you anticipate her bonding out, or are you going to ask that she be held till trial?
At this time she's being held without bond. She will have a bond review tomorrow. We will review, of course, her criminal history and other factors and make a decision on what our recommendation would be. But this is a very serious crime. 3 lives were lost. And so in cases such as this in the past, we have asked for the individuals to be held.
Has the family been informed, and what was their response?
Yeah, the family has been informed. I don't want to speak for the family, but each of the families want justice, and they want to know what happened. And so as this case moves forward, we will continue to keep them apprised of any information that we learn, but they are aware of the arrest and the fact that she is being held.
You're in touch with this community as much as anybody.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the impact this crash had on the community and your feelings now about needing to move ahead with this case?
So this was a very this case just really touched people. I grew up here like these young boys. They grew up here. They're young men, but they're so young, very young, in their 20s. So they went to Prince George's County Public Schools. That's the story of most of us. I went to Prince George's County Public Schools, and they excelled as athletes, as scholars, but most importantly, as human beings. Everyone loved them. I went to their vigil that was held at Wise High School, and the stories that people told weren't just about stories on the field. They were stories in the classrooms, in the hallways, in the churches, in their families. These were whole human beings who had a right to be here. We should be seeing Mr. Jackson in the NFL right now. The other 2 were also amazing athletes and amazing human beings. So it is sad. There was a palpable, just like grief in that vigil. I felt it. Anyone who was there felt it. So this was a tragedy on so many different levels. These were young men who were getting it right. We unfortunately have seen young men get it wrong, but these were the young men who were getting it right, and their families had invested so much in them. Their school invested a lot in them. The community invested a lot in them. They were shining stars, and so it was horrific. It was horrific, and this is a tragedy. But I think one of the lessons we have to learn in this tragedy is that people will be held accountable and responsible for their actions. And so we have to really think very seriously when we get behind the wheel. We have to ensure that we are prepared to be safe on the roadways, not to hurt ourselves or anyone else. And so this case, unfortunately, is a tragedy. At this point, it's really about accountability and justice.
Are you able to say where she had been, where she was coming from? Had she been out, at a club or anything like that?
So some of this information, obviously, we will not discuss at this time. We will be as transparent as possible, but we are also preparing for trial. Ms. Klingman does, enjoy, as any defendant, the presumption of innocence. And so as we pursue this case, we will be able to present facts as we are able to. At this time, we can't present any more facts about what happened in this case.
Two things. Are you able to share the speed limit that she was going?
I am not able to share that information at this
Does it
time.
say whether she was a friend of the group? Was she out with the group in terms of her relation to them?
I believe that they all went to the same high school and that they've known each other for a very long time.
And I know there was another car. I believe there were 3 cars involved. Are any of her charges connected to the other car? Because I don't think the driver in that one had injuries. Do you know?
Right. The charges in this case were just related to the three. Yes.
And you said it was manslaughter. Was that particularly because of the speeding and the driving under the influence involved?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.